If drones had been available during the Vietnam War, they would have changed the way the war was fought on many levels. From reconnaissance to combat, these unmanned aerial vehicles could have provided the United States with a decisive edge over the North Vietnamese army. But would they have actually made a difference in terms of winning the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people? Let's find out. The 1960s was a decade of great change and turmoil across the world, from the construction of the Berlin Wall to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. But perhaps one of the most significant events of this era was the Vietnam War. This long and bloody conflict saw the United States become increasingly involved in the struggle between North and South Vietnam, which had been raging since the 1950s. As American troops were sent to the region to help their South Vietnamese allies, it became clear that this would be no easy task. The North Vietnamese Army, also known as the Viet Cong, was a highly trained and motivated force that was able to effectively use guerrilla tactics to fight back against the U.S. military. Despite the best efforts of the U.S., the war quickly turned into a stalemate, and it soon became apparent that neither side was able to gain a decisive victory. This led to growing anti-war sentiment at home in the United States, and eventually to the withdrawal of U.S. troops in 1973 and the fall of Saigon 2 years later. The Vietnam War was a time of great innovation in military technology. The U.S. military was developing new and better ways to fight the war, including the use of drones. Drones are unmanned aerial vehicles that can be used for a variety of purposes, such as reconnaissance or combat. At the time, drones were small and simple machines that were not capable of carrying weapons. However, they did provide an important advantage to the military, as they could be used to gather intelligence on the enemy without putting human soldiers at risk. The U.S. military began experimenting with using drones in Vietnam in the mid-1960s. Although they were not yet armed, the drones were still able to provide valuable information to the military. For example, they could be used to identify enemy positions, track the movement of troops, and monitor the progress of battles. The U.S. military was able to gather a great deal of intelligence on the enemy thanks to the use of drones. This information was used to develop new strategies and tactics for fighting the war, which may have helped to turn the tide in America's favor. However, it is impossible to say for sure how much of a difference drones made in the war effort, as this information is classified and not available to the public. In addition to their use in reconnaissance, drones were also experimented with as a means of delivering supplies to troops in the field. This was a dangerous mission, as the drones had to fly through enemy territory to reach their destination. But this allowed the military to deliver supplies without risking the lives of human pilots. Overall, the use of drones in the Vietnam War was limited, as the technology was still in its early stages of development. However, they did provide an important advantage to the military, allowing them to gather intelligence on the enemy and deliver supplies to troops in the field without risking human lives. It is impossible to say how much of a difference drones made in the outcome of the war, but they were certainly an important part of the U.S. military's efforts. But what if we took this a step further and asked what if drones were more advanced and actually fought in the Vietnam War? How would that have affected the outcome of the war? Let's take a look. Drones today come in all shapes and sizes, from small surveillance drones to large, sophisticated fighter drones. In recent years, they've been used in a number of conflicts around the world, most notably the war in Afghanistan and the war in Syria. But what if drones had been used in the Vietnam War? How would they have changed the course of this long and bloody conflict? On one hand, drones could have given the U.S. military a significant advantage over the North Vietnamese Army. They could have been used for surveillance and reconnaissance, allowing the U.S. to keep tabs on enemy movements and positions. Additionally, drones could have been used to deliver bombs and other munitions with greater precision than was possible with manned aircraft at the time. This could have reduced civilian casualties and made it easier to target enemy soldiers and infrastructure. Moreover, drones could have been used to disrupt enemy communications and electronic warfare, making it more difficult for North Vietnamese forces to coordinate their attacks and receive supplies. By using drones to their advantage, the U.S. may have been able to win the war more quickly and with fewer losses. However, it's important to remember that the North Vietnamese Army was also highly skilled and experienced in guerrilla warfare. They were able to effectively use the terrain to their advantage and launch surprise attacks from unexpected sources. It's possible that the North Vietnamese Army would have adapted to the use of drones and found ways to counter their effectiveness. Additionally, the U.S. military would have had to have developed effective strategies and tactics for using drones in combat, which may have taken time and resources away from other areas of the war effort. Furthermore, the use of drones could have exacerbated the political problems facing the U.S. in Vietnam. The use of these unmanned vehicles could have resulted in more civilian casualties, which could have inflamed anti-war sentiment at home and put more pressure on the government to end the conflict. Ultimately, it's impossible to say how the Vietnam War would have played out if drones had been used. There are valid arguments to be made that they could have helped the U.S. win the war more quickly and with fewer losses, but also that they could have had little overall impact on the outcome of the conflict. What is certain is that the use of drones would have been a controversial and complex issue with far-reaching implications. One way that drones could have potentially made a difference in the Vietnam War is by providing real-time intelligence on enemy troop movements and positions. This could have allowed the U.S. military to more effectively target enemy forces and reduce friendly casualties. Additionally, drones could have been used to provide air support in combat situations, allowing ground troops to call in airstrikes with greater precision than was possible at the time. This could have reduced the need for large bombing campaigns and potentially saved many lives. Furthermore, drones could have been used to monitor and target enemy supply lines, making it more difficult for North Vietnamese forces to receive supplies and reinforcements. This could have weakened enemy resistance and made it easier to achieve military objectives. Finally, drones could have been used to gather photographic and other intelligence on enemy activities and installations. This could have provided valuable insights into enemy tactics and strategies, and could have helped to develop more effective countermeasures. While it is impossible to say for sure how the Vietnam War would have played out if drones had been used, it is clear that they could have had a significant impact on the outcome of the conflict. The use of drones could have provided the U.S. military with a number of advantages, from real-time intelligence on enemy troop movements to the ability to provide air support in combat situations. Additionally, drones could have been used to disrupt enemy supply lines and communications, as well as to gather photographic intelligence. While there are some drawbacks to using drones in war, such as the potential for civilian casualties and the risk of drone-on-drone combat, the advantages of using these unmanned vehicles could have outweighed the risks in the Vietnam War. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to use drones would have been a difficult one for the U.S. military and government officials at the time. However, the potential benefits of using drones could have made a significant difference in the outcome of the war. As we know, the Vietnam War ended in 1975 with the fall of Saigon. North Vietnamese forces had proven to be a formidable opponent, utilizing guerrilla tactics and enjoying the support of the local population. Without the benefit of advanced technology such as drones, the U.S. military struggled to make progress against the enemy. However, if drones had been used, things could have turned out differently. With their ability to gather intelligence, provide air support, and disrupt enemy operations, drones could have given the U.S. a much-needed edge on the battlefield. While it's impossible to say for sure how the war would have played out, one thing is certain: the use of drones would have been a game-changer. Do you think drones would have made a difference in the Vietnam War? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.